The Society of Ouroboros is one of the most powerful organizations in all of Zemuria, operating entirely from the shadow. Despite encountering them many times and witnessing the chaos they leave behind, they remain a complete enigma. The same is true for their leader, the Grand Master. She appeared to know everything about the world, yet her identity remained unknown. As for Ouroboros' true objective, it is still unclear. What we do know is that everything revolves around the Sept-Terrion. The grand plan is divided into 3 phases: the Crossbell Plan, the Phantasmal Blaze Plan, and the Internal Recurrence Plan. And today we're diving into the second phase, the Phantasmal Blaze Plan. Hello everyone, it's me, Panagon Vanemar, your Lord Kibis, and welcome back to Chronicles of Zemuria. A few months ago, we covered the foundation of Ouroboros and the Crossbell Plan. Now it's finally time to continue the story with part 3. Be warned, this video contains major spoilers about the Crossbell and Cold Steel arc. This is a massive chapter in the Trail series. So let's begin. Everything began in the year March S. 1203. After the Third Anguish, George Wiseman got defeated by liberal heroes. Badly hurt and weak, he tried to flee the Ark, but got killed by the Growl's rider, Kevin Graham, with an arrow that turned him into salt. Before his relic, the Aureole, and his staff could be recovered, Capanella appeared and took them, returning to Ouroboros aboard the Glorious. There, within the celestial globe, the remaining anguish gathered with the Grand Master. Despite their losses, the Grand Master declared the next phase would proceed. Thus began the Phantasmal Blaze Plan. The goal was to obtain the Sept-Terrion of Steel, born from the fusion of earth and fire, through a ritual known as the reverie between divine night. However, this ritual normally requires the world to be on the brink of destruction. Ouroboros sought to avoid that outcome, so instead they aimed to create a pseudo-reverie, a controlled version of the process that would prevent the Great Twilight from occurring prematurely. To achieve this, they needed to prepare 2 stages, one in Erebonia and one in Crossbell. In Erebonia, the second anguish, Vita Clotilde, was sent to guide events from behind the scene. In Crossbell, the anguish Norvantis and Arian Hood were deployed. Their role, not to lead but to observe and assist, because the real key to the plan in Crossbell already existed: the Azure-Zero project. Thousands of years before the Great Collapse, the Qua clan worshipped the Sept-Terrion of Mirage, Demiurgos. She, however, erased her existence. And then the cataclysm happened, preventing people to use magic anymore. The clan turned in alchemy, seeking to recreate their lost god, a project that would take centuries to complete. They built key facilities such as Stargazer Tower, Moon Temple, and Sun Fort. Eventually they succeeded. They created a new core, an homunculus named Kia, the vessel of a reborn Sept-Terrion. To protect this core, they formed the GG Code, with mission to protect her. They built influence through banking, Crossbell development, and even the Geofront. They also maintained influence by working with the Rivage Mafia, but there were limits to their control. Over time, the DG cult evolved into a dangerous and unstable organization. They rejected Helios, worshipped demons, abducted children, and conducted horrific experiments using artifacts like the Book of Azure. They also developed Genesis, a drug that granted immense power, at the cost of turning users into monsters. The action eventually drew the attention of powerful figures, including Cassius Bright, who led the destruction of the 12 Lodge. Even Ouroboros intervened from the shadow, and yet remnants survived with support from an ally of the Croix, Speaker Hartman. Survivors like Joachim Gunther continued their research in secret, while also safeguarding Kia. By this point, Ouroboros had discovered the Azure-Zero project and chose to support it, as its success would directly benefit their own plan. Tension escalated as multiple factions collided in Crossbell. AU Calvar Crime Syndicate expanded its influence. Rivage fought to maintain control, and a new police unit, the Special Support Section, began investigating it all. Unknowingly, they stepped directly into Ouroboros and the Croix family plan. When the time came to move Kia, Mariabel orchestrated an auction in Michelin. Arias McLean replaced one of the auction items, a Rosenberg studio doll, with a suitcase containing Kia. But the S.S.S intervened, discovered her, and took her in, delaying the plan. Joachim attempted to reclaim Kia, using Genesis and by mind-controlling Rivage and the military. The S.S.S tried to escape his army, but failed, and Nelly had to give Kia. Fortunately, Mariabel and the other Croix intervened, pursuing the S.S.S and bringing Kia to safety. With the GG cult collapsing and Rivage weakened, the Croix family wanted to eliminate loose ends. The Croix helped the S.S.S by finding the location of Joachim's hideout. Eventually, the S.S.S, alongside Estelle, Joshua and Rand, defeated Joachim. With the GG cult collapse and Rivage gone, the other Croix rose to power as mayor. And with the construction of Orchis Tower, everything was in place. Meanwhile, in Erebonia, Duke Cayenne, resentful of Chancellor Osborne, began orchestrating a civil war, influenced by Ouroboros. Vita Clotilde positioned Crow Ambrose, leader of the terrorist group Imperial Liberation Front, inside Tor Military Academy as a spy. As the awakener of the Azure Knight Ordain, he played a central role in the plan. Alongside Toa Herschel, George Gnome, and Angelica Rongner, Crow helped test the Argos prototype for Class 7, new students that will enroll themselves into a special class. During their field study, Class 7 repeatedly interfered with the ELF operation. At the same time, within the old schoolhouse, they discovered the Divine Knight Valimar. It was then that Vita began to closely observe Rean Schwarzer, recognizing him as a potential awakener. The West Zemuria Trade Conference marked a turning point. Leaders from across the western continent gathered at Arceus Tower. Unaware it was a massive alchemical device. Terrorist attacks carried out by the Imperial Liberation Front and Calvardian extremists triggered chaos across both Erebonia and Crossbell. However, thanks to the intervention of Class 7 and the S.S.S, total disaster was avoided. Using this crisis, the Iroquois declared Crossbell independence and froze international assets, placing pressure on both Erebonia and Calvard. Everything was now in place. Soon after, a meeting was held within the Celestial Globe between the 1st, 6th, and 7th Anguis. Along with Campanella, where they confirmed that the first phase of the Phantasmal Blaze Plan, centered in Crossbell, was ready to proceed. With Ouroboros' intervention, the Azure-Zero project was near completion. The Iroquois staged an attack on his own city, using the Red Constellation. Buildings were destroyed, civilians were injured, and even the IBC was blew up. The following day, the other declared himself the first president of Crossbell, and accused both Erebonia and Calvard of the attack. War became inevitable. Larius MacLean then abducted Kia and brought her to the Castle of Mirror in Michelin, where the core of the system was located. Mariabel and Ouroboros then activated the 3 bells across Crossbell, while the Geofront gathered massive amount of orbital energy. Kia awakened at the Sept-Terrion of Zero, a being with dominion over time, space, and causality. She empowered 3 aeons, created by the third anguish, Norvaltis. One of them erased the Guerrilla Fortress entirely, banishing it to another dimension. The S.S.S tried to stop it, but failed, and were under arrest. Crossbell was then sealed under a barrier, and war became inevitable. At the same time, in the Erebonia Empire, Chancellor Osborne was assassinated by Crow during a speech in Amdor. This single act initiated the Erebonian Civil War. The Noble Alliance, supported by Ouroboros, clashed against the Imperial army. Beta Clotilde declared the next phase of the Phantasmal Blaze Plan has begun. Soon after, Thor Military Academy was attacked. Breen, now as an Awakener, summoned Valimor but was defeated by Crow due to his inexperience. Forced to retreat, he fell into a coma for an entire month. When he awoke, the Empire was already consumed by war. Recognizing its importance, Vida kidnapped Elise and Princess Alphen to draw Reen into action. To save them, he had no choice but to reunite with Class 7. With Valimor and his ally, Reen traveled across Erebonia, gathering his classmate and confronting Ouroboros' agent, Jaeger and the Noble Alliance. When the moment came to discuss their course of action, they were interrupted by Vita Clotilde, who arrived with the entire cavalry. By an hologram, Dukayan invited Reen on board of the ship. Being in a position he couldn't refuse, Reen accepted to board the Pantagruel with Valimor. There, Dukayan offered Reen a place among the Noble Alliance, claiming it would end the war faster. Having no answer, he was escorted in a private room to think. During his time aboard, he spoke with Crow, member of Ouroboros, and even Princess Alphen, who was imprisoned here, gaining a deeper understanding of the conflict. He ultimately chose to escape with the princess. With his ogre power, he fought his way out, though even with Valimar, he could not defeat Crow. At that moment, Prince Olivert arrived aboard the Courageous, turning the tide as he summoned his allies to rein aids. With both sides evenly matched, Vida ordered a retreat. The Ouroboros plan could not be delayed. Thanks to her intervention, Rin and the other were able to leave the Pantagruel unscattered. From there, rather than joining either faction, Class 7 chose a third path, to help the people of Erebonia directly. Happy by this answer, Prince Oliver entrusted them with the Courageous, naming Towa acting captain. From there, Class 7 traveled across the Empire, liberating region from Noble Alliance control, clashing with Jaeger and Ouroboros forces along the way. Despite loss and sacrifice, they succeeded. They then liberated the Tor Academy. All was left now was retaking the capital, Emdor, and save the Imperial family. Meanwhile, in Crossbell, Floyd escaped imprisonment and regrouped with the S.S.S. Together they disrupted the Bell system, sustaining Kia powers. They faced Campanella, Ironhorde, and her Star Rider. But while they could not defeat them, the Ouroboros allowed them to proceed. With the system weakened, the barrier around Crossbell collapsed. The S.S.S. infiltrated Orcus Tower and confronted the other Qua, but it was using a White Gordias class, Arcarius, that was given unlimited power by Kia. However, before his defeat, Mariabel betrayed him, altering the contract with Ouroboros. At that moment, a colossal structure emerged, the Azure Tree. This granted Kia absolute control over reality itself. The ultimate goal of the Azure-Zero project and of this experiment was done. With Kia fully awakened, reality itself began to bend. This marked the true completion of the Azure-Zero project and the initiation of the Blaze in Erebonia. The S.S.S. entered the Azure Tree, overcoming powerful enemies and breaking through its Lariat domain. They faced Shirley, Sigmund, Wald, and even Arios himself. Each battle pushed them to their limit, but they endured. Isaac climbed either, they witnessed a distorted timeline, realities where they had failed. Finally, they confronted Mariabel, who revealed the truth. Kia could rewrite causality itself. Still, the S.S.S. refused that use Kia for this, and challenged Mariabel into battle. After defeating Mariabel, Kia lost control, becoming the Azure, the Miracles. Though they bound with her, they brought her back. For everything she's done, Kia was about to delete herself from existence. But Lloyd stopped her. He convinced her into returning to her family at the S.S.S. Thus, she willingly gave up her power, becoming a normal child. Mariabel, however, departed, having secured a place as a new Inguis of Ouroboros. As the Azure Tree collapsed, the party recovered Kia, Bian and Arios. The other is arrested for his crime, with Speaker McDowell reassuming his position as mayor. Though peace briefly returned, it did not last. Erebonia soon invaded Crossbell, bringing its independence to an end. While the S.S.S. were fighting their way to Orcus Tower in the Azure Tree, Class 7 launched their final operation to rescue the Imperial family. After fighting with the help of all the allies to the Noble Alliance force, They reached their objective and saved people they had come to rescue. However, Prince Cedric has been taken by Duke Cayenne. At that moment, a pillar of light engulfed Endor. Using the power of the Azure Tree, Vida awakened the Vermilion Knight, Testarossa, transforming the Imperial Palace into the Infernal Castle. Resolve Class 7 made their way into the imposing structure by using Valimar to open the front door. They then climbed upward, battling powerful enemies, including Ouroboros member and Elite Jaeger. However, they were too powerful to defeat. Fortunately, experienced allies arrived to fight them, allowing Class 7 to continue advancing to the castle. After a long climb, they finally reached the Vermilion throne. They found out destination. Ko and Vida were there waiting for them, as well as Yukayan and the captive Cedric. Now at the apex of the castle, Reen, Schwarzer, and Crow Ambrose pilot the Divine Knight and engage in battle. The pseudo-rivalry had reached its climax, and in the end, Crow got defeated. Him and Vida then declared defeat and the end of the war, as Ouroboros' objective has been achieved by now. However, the Duke wasn't pleased and forced the prince into Testarossa, triggering the Vermilion Apocalypse, a catastrophe once seen 250 years prior. With the help of Crow and Vida, Class 7 defeated the corrupted Divine Knight and saved Cedric by the cost of Crow life. In the aftermath, Rufus Alberia revealed himself as an Iron Blood of Chancellor Gilead Osborne. The latter then returned, alive and well, declaring that he would now take control of the Phantasmal Blaze Plan. He seized victories from both Ouroboros and the Noble Alliance. As a result of this unexpected event, Vida and the rest of Ouroboros members retreated from the Infernal Castle. After this, the Empire invaded Crossbell, and from now on, Reen had no choice but serve the Chancellor. As for Ouroboros, it wasn't the end, as they were preparing themselves to retake their plan from Osborne. So, that was the first part of the story about Ouroboros, the Phantasmal Blaze Plan. Without Ouroboros, all events that occur won't probably happen. And we didn't tell everything yet. Covering the Crossbell and the Cold Steel entire arc, I realized it was too long to make only one video, so I decided to split it into two. Next Trail Lore video, we're gonna talk about how the society would try to take their plan back and about the Grand Twilight. Anyway, that's the end for now. Again, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more lore video. Aside from the Trail series, I'm doing some lore video about Genshin Impact and the Legend of Zelda. I'm also doing theory speculation about Genshin Impact, and some time trails. For playthrough and livestream, check out my second channel, Panagon Valimar Gaming, where I stream most evening at 7 PM EST. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, may Adios watch over you. Pan Dragons offline.